So just continuing on with task 18, which is performing a bacterial culture and sensitivity. Again, I have my PPE, which is my gloves, lab coat, and goggles. I have my incubator here. It was outside in the sun and has been incubating for 24 hours now. So we're going to go ahead, open up the lid, and take a peek to see if we have any growth at all. I have a wee pad here because if there is some growth, we're going to want to add some antibacterial discs onto the colony growth. So I have my antibacterial discs here. These are Clavamox. It's a typical antibiotic that I use at my practice. We have brown acid thumb forceps to put the antibiotic discs onto the culture, and then I just have a pen with my notes just to write my findings 24 hours later. If there is colony growth, we're going to want to apply the antibiotic discs, and we're going to incubate for another 24 hours to see if the antibiotic discs are inhibiting the growth at all. If they are inhibiting the growth, chances are we can send this patient home with some Clavamox to help them get rid of this infection. And then if it's not inhibiting at all, we are going to have to try to find another antibiotic that might work for this friend. So again, I just have my notes right here. Our patient is Sweetie. She's a 16-year-old female spayed canine mix. I have the owner's information over here. I have the date from when we started, which was yesterday. I wrote collected vaginal discharge sample from patient, started our bacterial culture and sensitivity with the blood agar petri dish. And then I wrote today's date, and I wrote 24 hours later, and then I'm going to end up writing in my findings from today. Okay, so what we're going to do first, we're just going to take the lid off of our incubator. We're going to take our, again, it was on our shelf in here. We're just going to take our petri dish, we'll put our shelf back in here. Okay, and again, it's for Sweetie, my friend from yesterday, or my friend's sample from yesterday, excuse me. So we're going to go ahead and take off the dish. And it does look like we do have a little bit of growth that is starting. Okay, so if I hold it up to the camera, you can see we are starting to get some kind of growth on our agar petri dish here in all four areas. More so on the right side over here. Looks like down here has the most growth so far. So we're going to go ahead and put one of the antibiotic Clavamox discs onto each of these locations just to see if it ends up inhibiting any of the growth. So, but before I do that, I do have a printout of some pictures. So just for some comparison, this one right here, this picture looks like it has a little bit of growth, which actually is looking pretty similar to the growth that we are starting to have in our petri dish. So minimal growth. So that's a nice picture of some minimal growth. This next picture over here is a picture, it's a little darker, can't see it as well, but it has a little bit more growth, a little bit of a darker area all over here with some bigger circles of growth. So that would be an even more of a growth on the petri dish. This one is a pretty good one that has really distinctive colonies, very big colonies. So if we ever were to see this, this would be a perfect one to do some antibiotic discs on to see which ones are going to inhibit the growth of this bacteria. And then this one I liked because it kind of shows what we're about to try to do by putting our antibiotic discs onto our growth. So as you see, there was all growths all along here on the petri dish, on the agar and the plate. And by applying this antibiotic disc over in this area, you can see that there's growth everywhere except for this one area where the antibiotic disc is, which means that that disc is inhibiting the bacteria. So whichever antibiotic this disc is, they should be giving to that patient because it's going to help them get rid of their bacterial infection. So I thought that that was a pretty cool picture to show. Okay, so I'm just going to take my pictures, leave them over here. And again, I'm just going to open up my thumb forceps. I took sterile ones because you just want to try to stay as clean as possible. And then I'm just going to open up the cap off of my antibiotic discs. Just going to try to pour some to the end over here. Okay, Oh, dropped one, that's okay. Okay, so I'm just going to pick up my thumb forceps, and they kind of stick together a little bit, so you just got to be careful. And then I'm going to go ahead and place a disc on top of area of colony growth in the Petri dish. I had a couple more. Oh, there they are. They fell into the lid. Okay, we got one more. Okay, and you don't want to, like, smush it in there too hard. You just want to gently place them on top. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. We're just going to have our antibiotic discs on all 4 of our locations in our agar in our Petri dish. And again, we're just going to take the lid, place it back on the Petri dish. We're going to put it back on the shelf inside our incubator. And then we're going to take our lid, make sure we close it again, make it nice and firm so we're nice and closed. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to incubate our sample for an additional 24 hours just to see if the antibiotic discs are going to inhibit any of the bacteria that is growing on the Petri dish. So again, we're going to incubate for another 24 hours. So tomorrow we will reevaluate again and see if the discs are in fact inhibiting any of the bacteria on the Petri dish. Okay, so again, I used Clavamox antibiotic discs, so if they are inhibiting, that's awesome. If not, we're going to have to try to figure out another antibiotic that might be helpful to this friend. So that is the next portion of the incubation period for the bacterial culture and sensitivity. And then just before I stop this part of the video, just want to record my findings. So again, I wrote today's date over here. I wrote 24 hours later. I'm just going to write some bacterial growth noted. I'm going to say placed Clavamox antibiotic discs onto all 4 areas of colony growth in the Petri dish. And then I'm just going to do an arrow. We'll re-evaluate the sample again in another 24 hours. Okay, so as you see, just adding to my list, and then we're going to write tomorrow's date. 17. And then we're going to say additional 24 hours, parentheses, 48 hours after starting. And then tomorrow when I come back to do the next part of the video, we will reevaluate an additional 24 hours, which is going to be 48 hours after starting our bacterial culture and sensitivity, to see what we see on the Petri dish at that point, and if Clavamox might work for this friend, or if we're going to have to try to figure out another antibiotic. Okay, so that's the next part of task 18. I'll be back tomorrow just to do the next video to see what we find.